everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. My name is Sarah, I'm the owner of Colorfully Sarah Shop, and today I'm going to give you guys a tutorial on how to cross stitch. This will be a complete tutorial covering everything, including what supplies you need to buy, how to get set up, your first stitch, finishing the cross stitch. This is the cross stitch that you guys are going to be making today with me, and at the time that I'm filming this video I will be offering these available as kits to buy in my shop. So if you want everything picked out for you, ready to go, you can go ahead and purchase a kit from my website. Otherwise, I'll show you exactly what you need to go to the store and to buy everything individually. So yeah, let's jump right into it. Okay, so first let's go over supplies. Here's everything that you need. The first thing you're going to need is your cross stitch pattern. I've printed it out. It'll look something like this, kind of like a chart. And your pattern should also come with a list of all the colors that you need. And you're gonna need something like this when you go to the store to figure out what floss to buy. So every color of floss has its own number. So right here, we'll start at the top. The brand name is DMC, and this dark purple color is number 209. So this is eventually what we're gonna use. But when you go to the store and you look for floss, it's gonna come in something like this. This is the brand DMC, which is the one that I use. It's the most popular brand and the most easily accessible. It's gonna have the number on it, and the number tells you what color it is. Okay, after you have your pattern, you'll need a needle. This is a size 24 embroidery needle. The ones for embroidery have a slightly more dull tip and a wider eye. You will need scissors. Any scissors are fine, but embroidery ones are really nice. You also need all the floss that you plan on using. You need your fabric. Ida cloth is the most popular fabric used for cross stitch. Now this particular Ida cloth is 14 count. So 14 count Ida cloth means that there are 14 squares or stitches for every inch. A lot of patterns will recommend a specific size to use, but ultimately it's up to you. If you want to use 14 count, 16 count, 18 count, it's totally okay, but do keep in mind that it will impact the size of your hoop. Which brings us into the next thing that we need, a hoop. So if a pattern calls for 14 count Ida cloth on a 5-inch hoop, if you were going to use something like 18 count Ida cloth, your final project would end up smaller, so you might want to size down in your hoops. Something that you don't need but is nice to have is a needle minder. These are just little magnets that you can clip to the back of your project while you're working, and then when you have to put your needle down, you can place the needle on the needle minder and then you won't lose it. Another optional thing that you can get are bobbins. A lot of people, including myself, like to wind their floss onto bobbins, and then it makes it easier when you're stitching to just cut a piece of floss that you need in the correct length. Another thing that's not necessary but it's nice to have is a needle threader. If you're struggling to thread the needle, this is a really nice one I found on Amazon, and a lot of people also like to store their floss on something like this. This is nice if you want to cut the strands ahead of time and then you can just pull out the exact length that you need, but I personally prefer the bobbin method just because it's easier to store a bunch of floss, but you can do whatever works for you. So really quickly, I'm going to show you guys how to wind your bobbin. I would check what color floss you have. Okay, we got our labels on. Now we don't need this anymore. Okay, we're gonna take these off the floss. We're gonna split the floss down the middle like this. Now we're gonna put our hand through it like a little bracelet, and then we're gonna take one end, and then we're just gonna wrap it like this. And ta-da! Now you have a floss bobbin. Alright, the other way to store floss looks something like this. You can take your skein and you can cut all the pieces to a certain length like this. And then once you have all of them, you'll want to label what color it is, and then you can just tie it on like that. And then when you're working on a specific color, you can take it out like I just did, and then you can pick the individual strands from that floss. Okay, now we're going to get ready to stitch. Okay, so we're going to take our hoop. This little screw is how you loosen and tighten the hoop. So we're gonna twist it to loosen it, and then we're gonna take the bottom part out like that. We're gonna put that to the side for now. The next thing you wanna grab is your fabric. I would not recommend using your embroidery scissors to cut the fabric. Now this part's very important. You wanna make sure that you cut enough fabric to leave yourself some wiggle room for if the fabric frays, if you make a mistake. So I'm going to place my hoop approximately where I want the design of the fabric to be on the hoop. Now when you cut the fabric, I would recommend leaving about an inch of wiggle room on each side. What we don't want to do is cut just enough fabric so that it barely fits on our hoop. So I'm going to go ahead and start cutting. Okay, now we have the exact amount of fabric that we need. So now the next part that we're gonna do is put it in the hoop. So we're gonna take the smaller part of the hoop and we're gonna put it underneath the fabric. Now we're gonna loosen our hoop to the loosest setting. It could be a little tight at first to bend the fabric. Now you wanna make sure also that when you're putting the fabric in the hoop, for the most part, it's lined up straight. And once you get the fabric in the hoop, you can tighten it. Now you have your fabric in a hoop. This is the part where if you want to add a needle minder, you can. I'm gonna add this one, just so I can keep track of my needle. Now we're ready to stitch. Okay, so before we can start our first stitch, we're gonna need to know what color to start with. And the way we figure out what color to start with is by starting usually in the middle of the pattern. So we're gonna take a look at our pattern and we see these little arrows and we're gonna find the center of the pattern. So the center of the pattern are these 4 little squares. Now for this particular pattern, only one of them has a stitch, so we're gonna obviously start there, but it doesn't really matter which one of the squares you start with, you just wanna pick one that's close to the middle. So this particular square is a pink moon symbol. So we're gonna look at our chart over here and we're gonna find the pink moon symbol, and that tells us that we're gonna use DMC color 963. So we're gonna find our color 963, and that's the first color that we're gonna use to thread our needle. I'm gonna unwind a small amount of floss. Cut that. So this is the length of floss that I want to use. Now, I'm gonna get really close to you so you can see. Okay, so each piece of floss is made up of 6 strands. You have the option of using 2, 3, or 4. Different amounts of floss look better on different sizes of Ida cloth, but we're gonna go ahead and use 3 strands today just because that's very popular. And we're gonna count 3, and we're gonna split, and we're gonna pull this apart. Now we will have 2 long pieces. We're gonna take one and put it to the side for now. Okay, so I'm gonna show you guys the most basic way to thread your needle. So we're gonna take our needle and we're gonna try to fit the floss through the needle. You can try to pinch it, you can lick it, you can do whatever you need to do. Now we're gonna pull it through just a little bit. So we'll have this little tail and a longer piece of floss. If you look closely at the Ida cloth, you'll see that it has these little holes in it. Each hole will be the corners of your stitch. So each square on the chart represents 1 stitch. Okay, so we're about to start our first stitch, and in order to do that, we need to find the middle. So the way that I find the middle is I honestly just eyeball it. If you don't get it perfect, it's okay, because you can readjust the hoop when you're all done. All right, so we're gonna come up through the back, pull our needle up. We'll pull it through enough so that there's a little bit of a tail. Now, since we've started, we're gonna stitch diagonally, so we're gonna put our needle in the next hole. We're gonna pull that through. You should have a diagonal stitch like that. We're gonna take this tail, and we're gonna hold it to the side like this with our finger. Then when we come up through the top, then our tail is caught in the stitch like this. Now we're gonna finish the stitch like that. And we have completed our first cross stitch. We're gonna wanna make sure the tops of all of our stitches go from the top left to the bottom right. Or you could do bottom left to top right. It doesn't matter, just you wanna make sure that all of your stitches face the same direction when you're done. So our first stitch on the chart was this stitch, and we see that there's another pink one above it. So we're gonna stitch one more pink square right above this one. Now, since we went down in this hole, we can't come up through the same hole. So we're gonna have to start here. So we're gonna pull this through, and we're gonna go back down. We'll come up. We'll go back down. And now we have 2 pink stitches. So the way that I personally would stitch this is, since I have my needle threaded for this light pink color, I'm gonna do all the light pink in this area. I'm gonna count how many stitches from this pink moon to this pink moon. So if I count, I can see that it's 1, 2, 3 stitches and up 3 stitches. So 3 to the right and 3 up, and that's where I'm gonna start my next stitch. I would not recommend traveling more than 5 or 6 stitches across the back. Typically you'll want to end your floss and start a new one, but since these are all relatively close together, I'm just going to show you what that'll look like really quick. So just like our pattern, we're going to count 3 stitches to the right, 1, 2, 3, and then we're going to count up 3, 1, 2, 3. So that means that we're gonna need to stitch our next stitch up here. And we're gonna keep in mind that we're trying to keep all of our stitches the same direction. Okay, now that should match our chart. It's important that when you're stitching, you make sure that you get the needle exactly through the center holes. Sometimes when you get more stitches, it can be hard, but it will make your stitches so much neater if you can keep making sure that you thread it through the center. Now we have all of our pink stitches. Okay, so if I was gonna do this on my own, I would probably do this yellow part next. But for the sake of this tutorial, I wanna stitch some stitches that are closer together, so we're gonna go down to this brown part. So this brown part, we see there's this little squiggly symbol. And then if we look at our key, we see that's colored DMC 3827. So I'm gonna grab 3827. I'm gonna cut a little piece off. I'm gonna split it into 3. Here's my 3. Here's my threaded needle. Okay, so we can see from our chart that this next brown stitch is 1, 2, 3 rows down from the pink stitches and then 1 to the left. So we're gonna count that same thing over here. 1, 2, 3, and then 1 to the left. Which means that we should come out here. So we'll come out. Now I'm going to show you guys another way to do a stitch. So previously we were stitching one full stitch at a time, but another way that you can stitch, especially helpful in large areas like this, is to use something that's called the Danish method. And what that is we're going to do a bunch of half stitches. And then hold it with our finger on the back. And then instead of completing one full stitch, we're gonna do all the half stitches. And now if we can look at our chart, we'll see there's 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches across. So we're gonna do 4 half stitches across. 3. And now with this tail on the back, since we've already secured it in place, we can cut off the extra like that. Now we're going to go back and we're going to complete all the stitches. Okay. And then if we want to keep stitching, we can keep stitching, but I think for now we're just going to end it. So if you were going to finish your floss, thread your needle through the back through a couple stitches, pull it out, and then trim off. You'll see it's a lot easier to keep our stitches neater when all of the stitches are close together. So now that I've showed you guys how to start the first couple stitches and how to switch colors, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to finish this off camera, and I'll come back in a couple days and I'll show you how to finish it off. So now that our cross stitch is done, there's a few things that we can do. So the first thing that you can do is you can take this out of the hoop and you can iron it, make it really nice and flat again, and you can get it framed. This is great if you have certain pieces that are more rectangular, but a lot of my designs are specifically designed to be displayed in a hoop, so I will not be doing that method, but today I'm going to show you guys how to frame it in a hoop. So the first thing that's kind of optional is we have a lot of extra fabric around the edge. I personally like to trim a little bit of this off just so that it's easier to finish the back. Okay, so now I'm left with something that looks like this. And then here's the back once again. And then what I like to do is I like to take floss. It's in a color that I don't really use a lot, something that's ugly, but it doesn't matter because you're not going to see it. Okay, and I'm going to split this into 3 strands. Okay, so now I have 2 pieces of floss. I'm going to put one to the side for now. Okay, now I'm going to thread my needle. There's one, I'm going to double knot it. Now I have a double knot. Sorry if you can hear the birds beeping. I'm basically just going to do a running stitch down through here and then back up. And I'm basically going to continue this all the way around, stitching back and forth. I don't want to stitch too close to the edge. Now that we have stitched all along the edge, here is where the magic happens. We're going to pull on the thread. We can kind of help push it down. All of your fabric will kind of turn in like this. Stitch it right through the... I tie it just like that. Okay, now it looks like this. Now, you could leave it like this. Like, it technically looks fine from the front. But here's the step that I always like to do for the back. Is I like to take a little piece of felt and I'm going to cut out a circle about the size of the back. Then I take this little felt circle and I'm going to do something very similar. I'm going to take the other 3-strand floss from earlier. Thread this needle once again. Another knot. Okay, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go starting at the top and I'm going to stitch like this. I'm going to stitch like this along the top. Okay, and then when you're all done, you should have something that looks like this. And it will do an excellent job of protecting the back. Okay, again, a super extra bonus optional step, but if you want to finish it with a ribbon, you totally can. And ta-da! You guys completed your first cross stitch! If you guys have any more questions, feel free to let me know in the comments. And if you like this video, be sure to like it so that I know it was helpful for you guys. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye!